Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back, Sleepyheads, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sleepy Aliens Perspective. Now, I know this Diddy trial is pretty much what everybody is talking about. And while a lot of people aren't surprised at the depth of his depravity, I think it speaks to his involvement with the occult and him, carrying out these acts of SRA against Cassie Ventura. So in this episode, I'm going to be dissecting an interview from the Sean Atwood channel. Sean interviewed Ruhak Zara Marley, and yes, that last name is extremely relevant to not only her story, but it also sheds light on a lot of other things when it comes to the occult and the entertainment industry. Now, a lot of interviews that I see on the Sean Atwood channel, he manages to get a lot of different SRA survivors, people who have survived different aspects of the occult world, trafficking, elite trafficking, and he really does give them room to just tell their story and for other people to hear them as well. But something important about Ruhak's interview was that she talks about the first time she met Diddy back in the 90s. And what she says about him explains so much about why Diddy is the way that he is and why he would do the things that he did to Cassie Ventura. So this video might be a little bit long because I want to give Ruhak her due and make sure we tell her story before we get to that little bit. So Sleepyheads, if you can hang in there and just enjoy this, I think it'll be worth it. So more and more SRA survivor interviews are popping up on YouTube and TikTok. And these aren't just from famous people. These are from random individuals who live in California, Canada, Arizona, who are talking about when they reached a certain age. I think for a lot of people, it comes when they're in their late 20s, early 30s. They start to get a lot of memories about traumatic things. They start to have nightmares. And then they start to connect other dots with weird moments that they had with their parents. And they realize, oh my God, my parents been pimping me out, selling me out to all of these wealthy individuals, and all of their mental health issues, all of their trauma suddenly makes sense.
If you suspect you're ritually abused as a child, but you don't have confirmation and you can't really access the memories, one of the main questions I'd be asking is about your family and their connections. Do you come from family money? Do you know if any family member has Freemasonry links? Do you have family or a family friend that's high profile? Does your family run a successful business or has a successful business in the past? And lastly, is your family religious or connected to some form of church? And you may say no to all of those things, but ascertaining your family connections is a good place to start.
So, I am continuously having the same dreams. It's like the exact same setup. It's definitely me trying to process trafficking that I'm just generally avoiding because I don't even know what, I'm just trying to be real right now. I don't know what happened, and I really don't even know where I was trafficked. I know I was, and I've had small scale memories of specific restaurants and other stuff like that, but these dreams are in double story or multi-level. It looks like mall style kind of places, okay? And it's I'm looking around and there's these little units, they're separated by walls, but you can see in it. And there are people in each one. Like, I'm in one, and I've had these same type of dreams over and over and over because my mind is trying to integrate these memories. And I just haven't gotten I haven't sat with myself and connected to the body, the feelings, and the emotions that were occurring, because I'm remaining in this apparently normal part distanced view of it, right? So I'm like, oh, that's an emotional part. You guys have the feelings. You guys keep those over there, because I'm going to go do my job that I do every single day and be a mom. So anyways, I'm like, I'm in this like fluorescently lighted, and it's like night. It feels like it's night. I'm tired. And I don't know any of these people really, but we're all in this giant fucking thing. It's always like kind of like a mall. Anyways, this is what it looks like in real time, processing memories that want to come up. And I've seen a lot of people talk about if it's like your dreams, does it come up in your dreams? Yes, it does come up in your dreams, especially the themes, the feelings, and certain imagery that your mind feels like it's safe enough to start to see. Like, I'm not seeing yet the horrificness in the dream. My brain's like, we're just going to look at this mall situation. And I'm like, I need to draw it or something. So that's where I am on this Wednesday.
Hey guys, today I'm going to go into talking about like satanic ritual abuse for children. This is what I'm remembering right now, and there's more details I'll probably remember throughout time, I guess. But I do remember some of the ritual satanic abuse that happened when I was very, very young, like 3 or 4 years old, 5 and 6 years old, too. Some of them were in like some kind of a church, and I couldn't say what kind of church. I just remember like the sort of mahogany colored like church pews, right? And I remember the hallway in the middle, and I remember like some of those were like, there was sort of like the stage area in the front where they were sacrificing babies, and that's why my little kid self just answers like blood, floor, like scream, cry, like there's only like so many words I can get out at a time when it comes to remembering that stuff. But I just wanted to say what I do remember is that, and there being people dressed in like all black. Some were dressed in all white, like we kids were dressed in all white, and like dresses for us little girls. And I remember I think this is like Mithraism technically, like if I had to say it's like one religion or something, like when I look back I'm pretty sure it's like Luciferian in nature that way. And I also remember this happening at a school called Tesseract, which someone pointed out to me is like the monster in the book A Wrinkle in Time, and I have read that book, and I could not read that book. I started reading like a few chapters, and I just couldn't read it. My mom gave it to me when I was like probably 9 to read. Or at least she let me buy it. Like, I saw it on the shelf and was like, what about this one? But it's weird to me that she, I don't know. But yeah, I do remember, like, sacrificing kids in classrooms, at this place called Tesseract. I remember white vans showing up at Tesseract to pick us up and bring us places. And Tesseract is not a school anymore in Minnesota. This would have been in the South Metro of Minnesota. And I just wanted to let that out there because, like, if anybody remembers that school Tesseract, or went to it, or remembers of kids discussing things about it, I remember it being, like, a creepy place where all I remembered was recess and nap time, and that's really it. Besides the white vans and, like, the creepy abuse. I remember a really big gym, and I don't even think that's in the same building. I don't even know where that gym is, but I remember also there being, like, basements that they would bring us into that were all kind of concrete and gray in nature, and, yeah, that's what I remember, I guess, of the satanic abuse so far. I'll keep you guys updated as I remember more.
So I've been seeing a lot more of that. And I think we're just getting to this point in our society where people cannot say that SRA, that the occult, that the elite trafficking is not a thing. They cannot keep connecting it to, I don't even know if I can say it. Pizza. No, I'll just say that. I don't know. The algorithm will forever hate me. I may never survive it. But I remember the first time I learned about the elite SRA. It was back in 2020 when I saw an interview from Anneke. She basically talked about how in the 70s, growing up in Belgium, she was pimped out by her mother to an elite Belgium Satanic cult trafficking network. And when I say elite, she was dealing with some of the wealthiest people, not only in Belgium, but in Europe, and also some American connections as well. And a lot of her abusers are like dead and gone at this point. But the fact that Anneke survived, and she actually has a YouTube channel now and she interviews other SRA survivors. But if you go back to her original interviews when she tells her testimony, it is so disturbing to how, her mother basically pimped her out for money and a nice car. And every week, Anneke would get picked up, taken to this wealthy castle-like home, shuffled to their underground tunnel, and she went through tremendous amounts of torture. She saw sacrifices. Of course, she was abused, but she was also used to blackmail wealthy men as well. So her story is very powerful, and I do encourage people to look out for that. But that was really my first dive into, oh my gosh, this is happening, this is elite. Because, of course, I knew it in the back of my mind, but there aren't that many people, especially from that time period, who are giving those testimonies about surviving elite SRA. But Anneke's story really does reveal so much about how the cult members operate. And I encourage people to check that out as well. But it's crazy to see the amount of stories that are popping up online and more people speaking out. And I think it's really putting things into the forefront to where, these things can't be lopped into this single-minded conspiracy bowl that people just think is not real. And even though Diddy's case seems isolated, it's so interconnected to so many other wealthy individuals. And it's going to be interesting to see, compared to the Epstein trial, the other wealthy individuals who get dragged into these crimes and are connected in that way too. And it's unfortunate that Tony Busby, after that last situation with that last survivor who implicated Diddy and Jay-Z, and I know there was some rumors and possibility of witness intimidation and her being afraid, so she changed up her whole story. But regardless of that, it does put Tony Busby in the situation where his reputation is now questionable. And so for him being an individual who was so ready to go after, all the other elite people that were connected to these crimes, I don't know. I think it could really slow that process down. And when it comes to these highly publicized cases like P. Diddy, it does feel like they just focus on this one celebrity, this one bad person. It's a whole Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein kind of ordeal where they just focus on this one demonic public figure, basically. And that becomes the entirety of the issue, and that's what people focus on. But I think enough people are aware of the general depravity that is not only, coming from Diddy, but so many other people in the entertainment industry as well. And I just wanted to talk about this because I know that a lot of people may not believe Ruhak Zara Marley and everything that she has to say. But at this point, there is a whole collective of individuals who have been telling similar stories. I have read 2 books from MK Ultra SRA survivors, Kathy O'Brien and Wendy Hoffman. If you haven't heard of or read Kathy O'Brien's books, you absolutely should. Transformation America is something that's really hard to read because the most disgusting things happened to Kathy O'Brien, not only in her adulthood, but her childhood as well. And for her to be alive still and telling her story and speaking out for other survivors is so powerful. And there's also Wendy Hoffman, who, again, MK Ultra SRA survivor. Wendy, her story is very equally as disgusting and disturbing, but something that she reveals is that even through the MK Ultra programming, some children were trained to engage in witchcraft, and they were used to impose witchcraft on other people, basically. They were trained to do witchcraft, and they were trained to, participate in rituals to inflict, whatever witchcraft onto other people. But she would be trafficked to the British royals, essentially, and she does, in her book, talk about encounters that she had with Queen Elizabeth II and their underground system and how those rituals took place. Her book is extremely revealing, and again, these books were written, 20, 30 years ago. So that's one thing, because I know people are like, well, these people just want to be famous. Like, the fact that these books aren't popular or things that you hear about all the time, I think that explains a lot. There's also Mariah Carey's sister, and a few years before her passing, she spoke out about being an SRA survivor.
There was a close family member involved in a satanic cult. Used to force me to attend certain rituals. There were a lot of things that I witnessed that, were like secrets that you wish you didn't have to hold on to. People would be wearing black robes with hoods, so you couldn't see their faces. And they'd be walking in a line, chanting the usual things that satanic cults do. I did suffer abuse during those rituals. Some of those satanic holidays, they always will be involved with abuse with children. When Mariah was in any danger, when she was a child, when there was something going on where she could have been harmed, I did whatever I could do to protect her. Mariah was 3 years old, and I was 11, and I was threatened, if you don't do this, what we're telling you to do, and we're gonna kill your sister, When you're given that type of a threat, it's almost impossible to ignore what you're being told.
Yeah.
Mariah, I know that you've gone through a tremendous amount of pain and difficulty. And sometimes it's as though, I know sometimes you feel as though what you're remembering didn't really happen, I just want you to know that if there was ever any way that you needed help from me, just pick up the phone and call me. I would always be there for you.
So there are also more counselors and psychiatrists now who work with SRA survivors, and I think that's important. And I'm saying all this because we need to legitimize these stories. Society needs to come out of this mindset of, is this stuff really real? Is this stuff happening? Well, counselors, psychiatrists know it's happening. We have multiple individuals born in different decades who are all talking about the same type of occult practices and the same type of abuse. But these mental health professionals, from the stories that I've read, they don't initially know that their clients are SRA survivors. Their clients often come to them seeking trauma therapy or treatment for dissociative disorders. And another person you can look into if you want to read more about that stuff is David Icke. I know he is basically seen as the guy who believes in reptilians, but he cites every bit of his research. Like, his stuff is like airtight, okay? So, but he talks a lot about the history of SRA and the elite, not only the British royals, but also the older occult circles like the Knights of Templar, the Rosicrucians, these older circles that basically evolved into the factions within Freemasonry that are truly occultic and truly engage in the ritual sexual magic and the energy draining that is done to children, essentially. I mean, we can also say adrenochrome, but that's just an easier way to put it. But it's crazy that people in our society are still trying to determine if SRA is real. And I hope with this whole situation with Cassie Ventura and P. Diddy that people actually start to see it, and they don't. At this point, it's getting to the point in our society where we can't deny it, because it's one thing to have kinks. I mean, I'll never understand people who like to be peed on, or there's even people who have the kinks of being shat on. Like, I don't understand that. But what I do understand is that those are satanic practices. It is all about having a sense of depravity and breaking someone down mentally, physically, and spiritually. That is a part of that process, because you're draining their spirit. And these people, they get off on that, they feed off on that, because that is how, in the process of that ritual magic, that is how they gain power. That is how they gain energy. And the fact that those freak-offs with Diddy were lasting 4 hours, 4 days, I mean, that is just insane. And the fact that, you know, if he wasn't there, he would still make Cassie do them, and she would have to do them over a webcam. And, you know, the fact that he would check in to make sure that she was still having sex, it says so much. Now, I can acknowledge the anecdotal nature of SRA simply because this isn't a topic that gets institutional and government action. The American Board of Psychology hasn't addressed the mental health reality of SRA survivors. There aren't institutional level doctors and scientists studying the impacts, writing papers, or addressing these matters at a conference. I mean, yes, so in the 80s there was the Satanic Panic that was fueled by growing trends in entertainment that promoted satanic themes and ideologies. And there were numerous cases of individuals claiming to have been impacted or had crimes reflecting a satanic nature committed against them. And I know people still, like, I want to say it was the FBI that came out and they were like, there's no such thing as like satanic cults. These things are real. And I love Criminal Minds. I love that show, but I completely rewatched it one time, and there was an episode where they were spewing out the propaganda that satanic cults are a myth in society. And there's no proven like cases where any crimes were truly proven to be of a satanic nature or committed for satanic purposes. And I had to side-eye that show, and I realized, of course, it's almost like those movies with a lot of military stuff where it's going to include some propaganda to make these government agencies look a little bit better, you know, put them in a positive light. But that's another story. I also want to just touch on the fact that So many accounts of SRA have been diluted and discredited by the mass media and the debunking of QAnon. And you know what that means. So, of course, while some aspects of the Q propaganda I think are absolutely ridiculous and crazy, the aspect of the elite trafficking was incorporated into that propaganda to derail the amount of individuals who, in that time period of like 2019 to like 2021, who were becoming aware of SRA and calling out for action to be taken on an institutional level. I mean, there were legitimate protests in, I believe, LA in 2021 where people were protesting about the elite trafficking and to save the children. Like, that legitimately happened, and that was not covered by the mass media. So overall, I really do, before we get into all this, I know I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but I just wanted to shed light on where we're at in society when it comes to SRA and why we need to really give more space for people like Ruhak, Zara Marley to tell their stories, and why we need to, I mean, we don't have to believe it, but to listen and to continuously expand our understanding and our awareness of the topic, I think, is so important. But I encourage disbelievers to contemplate the reality of light and energy harvesting on a multi-dimensional level. I also encourage people to think about the fact that the trafficking industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Who in our society is retaining that kind of wealth? How do these people clean that kind of money? And I've mentioned this in other videos, but the mafioso business model is tried and true. The mafia has been connected to corporate entities, politics, and the entertainment industry. These companies, these entities do not build these companies off clean money. They always need some kind of loan, some kind of backing, some kind of backdoor financial assurance, and the mafia provides that for them. But I am more than confident when I say that SRA does exist. It is not a growing problem. It's been a consistent problem in our society. And I think it's getting to the point that the cabal, the elite, occult circles, they can no longer hide this. And I think for the sake of survivors who speak out, and for the thousands, if not millions, who cannot speak, I think it's past time to stop debating if it's real and to accept the plethora of evidence that currently exists and is fully accessible. So please, I encourage disbelievers to educate yourselves. And again, I have read, different books, different articles. I've watched documentaries, seen numerous interviews. The accounts from survivors are similar. The personality types of their perpetrators are also very similar. And how they explain how these people operate, they're very similar. And these survivors don't know each other. They're not feeding off of each other's stories. They're just telling their own story. And people also need to acknowledge that SRA does not discriminate against race or gender. It happens in households of high and low socioeconomic status. And that's because the victim needs to be human and the energy must be harvested. And that is at the core of SRA.
I would be put into a van and taken to Freemasons once a month. There would be other children. Satanic ritual abuse would take place. My grandmother, his mother, and one of his sisters were tasked with the responsibility of teaching me about how to be the best child worker I could be. The first at the hands of my father occurred when I was 4 years old, and I remember him pushing me to the ground and me. My mother was complicit in that her absence spoke volumes. She was a classic narcissist. He was your classic psychopath. She was not present, even if she was present, if that makes sense. At the age of 5, my father drove me to my grandmother's house, and he said it was going to be a very special time for me and that she was going to teach me some things. When he then delivered me to her house, she took me into her bedroom and shut the door and locked it. And I turned around and faced her and said, "What are we doing? I don't understand." And she said, "You will do what you are told, otherwise there will be trouble." And then she told me how I was to try and perform in a manner so that Daddy's friends could have some fun with me and pay him more money. She started parading around and showing me moves and how to look at men and how to men and where to put my hands, and I was required to mirror her and reflect what she was doing. If I didn't get it right, she would slap me across the face. So there were many men there, and I'm not saying every Freemason was a pedophile, but I'm saying at certain levels throughout their hierarchy, they were doing this. That went on. We're now moving, I'm getting closer to 10 years of age now. My behaviour was out of control at school. I was so traumatised. I was screaming for help.
In the men, I was made to be by a pig while like 50 or so police officers in their dress whites masturbated on me.
Are you making this up, Alex?
No, sir.
Did your mother know you were going through this?
Yeah, I talked to her about everything.
While it was happening?
Yes. My whole family did.
And why did they let it happen?
Well, part of it is because they break you on purpose. So part of the torture, the reason is to what they call break your brain. I mean, that's all a lie, and all of that's a lie.
I mean, why did your mother and father allow that to happen?
Because they believe these lies.
So are they Mason people as well?
No. But they're broken and they can't think about these things. They can't even, they push it into the back of their mind and they can't face these memories.
Well, how old are you?
I'm 31.
And did this happen to you while you're in Texas now, right?
Yes.
Did this happen in Texas?
Yeah, it's everywhere, though. It's not just Texas. I mean, people from, like, he was in the International Police Association, and remember he telling me, so basically it's just allowing cops who are...
What would happen to the fetuses, the unborn babies?
I used to be taken away most of the time, and one time baby was taken out of me and then killed in front of me because it was still alive.
And then what would happen?
Well, after they killed it, they would eat it. But we were also made to eat it.
You were made to eat your own fetus?
Yeah.
Who made you do this?
My nan.
Quite some time. I'm not sure how long. I lost track of time. I no longer knew when it was daylight or when it was dark because of the covering, and every so often they'd come and just take the covering off and just stand at the top of this pit and taunt me, "Where's your God now?" And they threw human flesh, baby flesh down, and that's what I was to survive on, if I was to survive.
They made it to be like it was a great privilege to eat the bodies. I mean, the girl that I had to kill, they treated me like I was being given a great gift when they gave me a part of her body that I had to eat. I remember being horrified, but
I just think it's so important as a society that we make space for learning and dialogue when it comes to SRA. And I think that will allow the narrative to evolve and more action to be taken to rectify the matter. But the truth is, this isn't a worldly matter. SRA is a component of spiritual warfare. And the dark forces of this world, they desire to consume light and to make the world go dark. And I think not enough people in our dimension are operating with the level of spiritual, physical, and psychological awareness that's truly needed to address this epidemic properly. Because trust me, I do believe this is an epidemic. And we have been like free range, just like roving prey to these people. It's these predators. That's how they see us. They think we're so the mirage of what we believe our society is. They trust that it's so strong that most of us will continue to not believe. And for those who do believe, we will be isolated enough. And that will still allow them to have that consistent amount of prey that they need to fulfill their rituals and do their energy harvesting and all their magic. And I realize now that this is 21 minutes. So we're going to chop this up to part 1. And and in part 2, I'll actually talk about Ruach Zara Marley. But there are just hard truths you have to acknowledge when you talk about this subject matter. I mean, yes, witchcraft is real and it runs this planet because those with power cannot retain power without witchcraft. And some of especially the book about Wendy Hoffman, when she was explaining in her book, the MK Ultra SRA survivor, that she was trained to do witchcraft and how not only she alleges that the British royals, but other government institutions, they all use witches for psychological warfare and spiritual warfare and remote viewing and remote warfare. It's incorporated into all of that. But these people, they cannot retain power without it. And if you read her book, you really see how they utilize that stuff. And I think it'll definitely make you look at Stranger Things in a different way for sure. Not that anybody, hopefully, does not just think that that's a depiction of fiction, But yeah, if people want to acknowledge SRA, you have to first acknowledge that witchcraft is real. And yes, you have to acknowledge that God is real, that demons are very, very real, and that there are some really disturbing cults, covens, cabals out there. That definitely has to be acknowledged. But what's hard about acknowledging that is that it really fucks up your psyche. And when you're so used to seeing the world through this fun lens of, oh, we have cities, we have entertainment, you can get an education, you can start a business, and there's all these beautiful things about this world. And yes, I do still see all of the good in our society, but it's built on a lot of darkness. And I'm not saying that the earth is doomed, but I think as spiritual beings, we must become aware of these things. And we have to start operating in our daily lives from a very spiritual perspective that allows us to not only bring healing energy into our own lives, but into others in this world. Because that is the only way to really cleanse this planet of all the dark energy that has been infecting it. And yes, I think when you look at institutions and the entertainment industry, it sucks when you start to see the world for what it is. Nothing will feel the same. What can you trust? Who can you trust? And what kind of brainwashing and programming have you gone through? And that's something I think about more and more as I get older. I think about the programming that we go through in grade school as children when it comes to learning history and how history is presented to us, how leaders are presented to us, whether, they're all old white men and how there's only a select amount of minorities who have had historical impacts that are presented to us. I think about that stuff more and more now. And I think definitely in my late 20s, I started to have that unraveling. I started to really break that programming, and just kind of at this point, I'm still like catching moments where I realize, oh, this is that normative societal programming. How can I evolve this? What do I need to learn to help me like break this programming? I think at some point you have to be very intentional about not only reprogramming and rewiring yourself to heal from trauma and, you know, the different things you've gone through in your life, but also societal programming. Like, do not think about sex this way. Do not think about relationships like that. Do not, even the basic programming from being a kid and watching cartoons and different kid shows where, you know, you're kind of taught that school's a joke, you hate school, it's a waste of time. But if you were like methodically taught how to operate in school and how to utilize school and how to utilize college, I think I would have had a much different experience. And I was a really good student. I had good grades, and, you know, I have a master's degree. I had a good time in college, but I still could have done, I don't know, I would have made different decisions, I think, when it came to everything that I got from that. And I was in like 5 clubs. I didn't do bad, but I wish someone would have told me, you should double major. Always double major. You have to double major. I think that's so important. Always have like one main career and a backup career, and get as many certificates as you can while you're in college. Those are so helpful. If you're not going to go into like a trade school, you know, and you're just going to go to a regular 4-year college, I think that's important. But just the programming when it comes to all of that, they make it seem like it's all just, you know, another day, a part of the system, and you go through it and then you get out of it and you're like, okay, what next? I don't feel like I was prepared for what life was supposed to be like after all of this. And I even been thinking too, I've been wanting to talk about this more. So when I was a kid, my mom would make me watch the morning news and the evening news as well. And I remember as a kid, the evening news would come on at like 6 o'clock on ABC. And then after that, it would be Entertainment Tonight. And I remember being a kid and I just thought it was normal that, oh, celebrities are important, so they have their whole news segment. And then as I got older, I realized how strong that programming was to have this societal focus on celebrities and what they're doing and what they're wearing and what they're saying, and always giving them this pedestal, this beacon in society, this reminder that it's important. And I would just wonder what my mind would have been like if I didn't have that programming of celebrity news, celebrity importance. I mean, gosh, a lot of us wouldn't be online right now and talking about a lot of celebrity things, that's for sure. But I think about that programming with Entertainment Tonight. I mean, I think they fulfilled an extreme purpose when it comes to societal programming, because, you know, the way we regard celebrities, the way celebrities can take over every news station if there's a scandal or something going on, it really does. It's a level of distraction. If we focus on celebrities, we don't focus. It's easy to not focus on real news, real societal issues happening. And so the fact that celebrities are always this blanket of distraction for people, and we focus on it because we've been programmed to focus on celebrity news, I think that says a lot. Man. So we're just going to call this part 1, introduction. I don't know. But I just want to just end this. So there's a book. I still need to read this book, but it's by Dr. Colin Ross. He is a psychiatrist who helps patients with dissociative disorders. For those who don't know, satanic ritual abuse relies on dissociation. They expect children, individuals to, in the process of their programming and abuse, they need them to dissociate from themselves. And on a 3-dimensional level, they need them to basically dissociate from consciousness so that they can be programmed. Because when a person isn't operating in a state of consciousness, it's almost like them being in a hypnotic state. You know, these people can create a whole nother personality, and they can give that personality, you know, a certain set of rules, and when that personality can be activated, the purpose of that personality. And if you've read anything from like MK Ultra survivors, or, you know, watched any interviews, you know, these people are programmed. They have different personalities that are programmed to be sex slaves, to assassinate, to be drug mules. It's wild. And that's why I say you should definitely read Kathy O'Brien's book, or Wendy Hoffman's book, because it definitely explains why they put the victims and survivors into that state of dissociation. It is so necessary for programming. Because if a person's fully conscious, they're not going to let you take over their mind. They're not going to drop that willpower, you know. But if they go through a certain amount of abuse, their will is going to be broken down, and eventually they'll dissociate and disconnect from what's happening in the reality. And from there, it's very easy for someone to take over and program them. So yeah, SRA deeply relies on dissociation to fracture someone spiritually, mentally, and physically. But Dr. Colin Ross, he has helped over 300 patients who he was not aware that this was going to become what it was, but over 300 patients have accounts of experiencing satanic ritual abuse. And these patients, again, came to him for dissociative disorders. And I think that really says a lot. So I'm going to wrap up this first part. I didn't mean for this to be so long. I don't think it's so hard for me to make a short video, Sleepyheads. I can't explain it. I don't know. It's like when I get to talking about this stuff, there's just so many layers to it. And there's just so many things that I always want to mention. But please watch the following episode, and I will actually talk about Ruach, Zara Marley. But I think this was a good introduction and good to just touch on like SRA and P. Diddy and all the different interviews and people who are speaking out about it, and how it's all coming to culminate to where at some point this will have to be addressed on a government institutional level. Like, I expect to see some, you know, different language when it comes to like the diagnostic statistic manual that psychiatrists use and mental health providers use. You know, there's going to be some new categories added. There has to be. If, you know, this Dr. Colin Ross has over 300 patients who have experienced SRA, I think that says a lot. But Sleepyheads, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And like I said, I will follow up in my next episode and we'll get more into Ruach. But thank you, Sleepyheads, and I hope you have a good night.